Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to PlayLoad. This is all my video game pickups for the month of May 2021, and wow, it actually kind of felt like a normal month. At least for me, because I took a little trip down to the East Coast, went to North Carolina, New Jersey, technically Washington, D.C. very briefly, New York City, as well as Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So I was kind of all over the place over there. It was nice, and because of that, I actually got some stuff during that little adventure, as well as a mystery package, because I genuinely don't know what this is. But yeah, so let's talk about these video game pickups, and as always, like, you know, tell me about your pickups. What did you get? Put it in the comments. Or, you know, follow me on Twitter and tell me there, Instagram, whatever. Do all that stuff. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate that. Now, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing I got had absolutely nothing to do with anything I just said, but it's something I ordered. And I think it was a very common pickup for people this month. This is Resident Evil 8, The Village. Specifically, this is the Deluxe Edition. This is one of the remnants of when I still had access to a Best Buy Gamers Club Unlocked membership. I won't talk about all that because there's no point. But basically, you got 20% off of all the games. So, yeah, I got a nice little deal on that. And it was because of that, it was still cheaper than buying the Standard Edition, although I could have bought the Standard Edition for even less. But whatever, get the cool DLC and stuff that comes with it, whatever. And it came with a Steelbook. I don't really... Do you guys care about Steelbooks? Am I like the only one who's just like... I don't really care about Steelbooks? I mean... I don't know, I just don't care. I just don't really care about them. But either way, it's still cool to have this. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I really want to, because I really enjoy Resident Evil games, except, you know, your 5s and your 6s and so on. But yeah, I do enjoy Resident Evil, at least the mainline series, so cool to have that. But moving on, like I said, I took a little trip across to down to the East Coast, and this story might be a little all over the place just because of the sequence in which I've got stuff laid out. But basically, when I went to North Carolina, I was down in Raleigh, and I was staying with a buddy of mine, and, you know, I'm just kind of perusing through his stuff, because that's what us nerds do when we go to our fellow nerds' caves, is we just look at all their things, right? And so I noticed at one point, you know, we were looking through his Blu-rays, and he's just, like, we noticed he had 2 copies of Total Recall on Blu-ray and like Ultra HD 4K. And I was like, you got 2 copies? He's like, oh yeah, take one, I don't care. So he gave me a copy of this. I know it's not a video game, but I just thought I'd show it to you because it was a pickup. So thank you to my buddy Daniel for doing that. But more specifically, video game stuff, right? Now you're seeing there's some Saturn stuff there. It's not, unfortunately, it's not going to be quite as exciting as I would have hoped. There's a little story that is required for this to make any sense. A while back, I think it was last year at some point in 2020, I had ordered a replacement, well, not a replacement, a reproduction of a game called Deep Fear. Deep Fear was a Sega Saturn game released in in Europe and in Japan, but it never came out here. It was made by Sega, and it was actually their version of a Resident Evil game, believe it or not. And we unfortunately never got it. However, the American version of the game was finished. It was just never officially released. So it leaked online, and people have made, like, burned copies, whatever. But this one dude named Ben Boyd, he actually went to the trouble of, like, you know, making custom artwork and custom cases and all this great stuff, and you could buy those off of him, and I did. And I told that story back in the day, the more detailed version, but basically I got it. The only issue with it is that it didn't have a case. So it's basically just been kind of sitting out waiting for a replacement Saturn case, which are not the easiest things to come across. And with the whole world kind of locked down for a year or so, you weren't going to events or anything, so I wasn't seeing an opportunity to pick one up. But I'm hanging out with Daniel, we're driving around, and we stop at this one game store. And I look through, they actually have a Saturn section, which is not very common. And I'm looking through it, and you can predict basically what happened, which is I just picked up a game, like the cheapest one that was in good shape. And that game happened to be like PGA Tour 97, whatever. But that ended up having a weird benefit, but we'll get back to that. But yeah, so Deep Fear got a sacrificial sports case. And now it looks really good. You know, and of course I put it in one of those case protectors. But yeah, this looks legit. So I'm going to keep this with a couple of the other reproduction ones that I've got, like the Christmas Nights long box. And a couple of the translated games that got releases like that. So it'll be in that little section for the Saturn. Very, very cool. One of the unintended perks of doing that, though, was man, Saturn prices have really gone up, and I know you all know that, but like, I'm sitting there and I find a sports game. That's like the typical sacrificial case, right? PGA Tour 97. very, like, as far as on Saturn terms, common as dirt, right? So I'm thinking like, okay, this is gonna be like $2.99 or whatever. Nope, $8.99. It was the cheapest one, and it was also not cracked and broken and stuff. And I was like, fine. So you pull the trigger on that, just thinking like, man, Saturn prices really suck. So that was all I was getting it for originally. But then I got it back here, and I took out the guts of it to replace it, as I said. But then I just felt like comparing it to my own pre-existing copy of PGA Tour 97, and it turns out the one that I had just bought was in much better shape. The manual was much cleaner, not as dirty, there was no sun fading or whatever. So in a weird way, I got an upgrade to a Saturn game I already owned. But yeah, so PGA Tour 97 just kind of got a, let's call it a firmware update, and we'll just be good with that. But yeah, so basically the whole point there was to get Deep Fear. But yeah, very, very cool to get that out of the way. And then now I have a spare back inlay and a manual I'm never going to need, but whatever. Moving on. Some actual new pickups, though. While I was with Daniel in North Carolina, we went around to a few different stores, and for the most part we were just kind of striking out. But we went to this one, I don't really know how to describe it. It was just kind of a high-end Goodwill, because it was a place where they just kind of sold knickknacks and everything. All-purpose stuff, but it's like all used stuff. In Japan, that would have been like a book off, or more like a hard off, really. It was just where it just kind of has everything. But instead of donations, it's sold. It's just sold at cheap, right? So they had a video game section, and we kind of go through the whole thing, and you don't find much of anything, right? But I ended up seeing something that I was like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. It was in the, like, because you know what I'm talking about when you go into these type of stores. It's usually like all the sports stuff, and it's always destroyed, and there's really very rarely you find anything. I mean, occasionally you do, but it's rare. In this instance, I found something, not a super hidden gem or anything, just kind of stunned that I didn't have it, and that was Crash Bandicoot 2 for the PS1. I was kind of surprised to see this, first of all, and then second of all, to realize I didn't have it. I have Crash Bandicoot 1 and Crash Bandicoot 3, but I never had Crash Bandicoot 2. Go figure. So this was $3. Now, the case was not in good shape, and the disc was pretty scratched up, so I was like, I'll bet that's why it's here. So I took a gamble on it, and then I was like, okay, for $3, whatever, I'm gonna pull that trigger. And this will become relevant in a little bit. But yeah, screw it, let's just jump ahead. I ended up going back. At that point, I ended up going up to New Jersey. And when I was up there, I met up with my buddy Rob Janos, who you guys would know if you listen to the podcast. He's usually on that. He actually works at a video game store called Digital Press in, I think it's Clifton, New Jersey. And I asked him once we got there, I was like, hey, can you you have a disc resurfacer, right? Is there any way we can throw this through there? And he's like, yeah. So he goes ahead and he does that. And then while he's doing that, he just, he's like, we got tons of spare cases around. So he just replaced the case, so it's all clean. And then he went ahead and, did the disc buffering. And then it was like, okay, let's see if it works. Once I got back to Chicago, I proceeded to rip the disc on a PC, 100% functional. So yeah, for $3 essentially, I got a very nice copy of Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strike Back. Unfortunately, Greatest Hits Edition, but whatever, $3, I don't really care. And so now I have the complete trilogy. Now mentally rewind back down to North Carolina. I'm hanging out with my buddy Daniel, and I'm at his house, and we're just kind of looking, again, you just look at people's collections. This is what you do, right? And he started asking me questions about the Neo Geo CD. And something you need to understand about Daniel, he's the only person that I know, other than myself, who actively collects for the Neo Geo CD. But we do it for different reasons. Like, I did it because I kept hopping over to Japan, and I kept seeing that stuff, and I was like, I'm never going to find it cheaper, so I just started vacuuming it up, right? He was the only person I know who was actually passionate about that console, and he was had it in the late 90s, and he was collecting it as much as he could. And so it was just kind of an interesting perspective, because for him it's one of his legit favorite consoles. And so we're just talking about our collections or whatever, and he was like, how many games do you have? And I looked it up on my little records and everything, and I was like, okay, apparently I've got 58 games. And he counts us up. He's like, I've got you beat. I've got 60. And I was like, golf clap, PGA Tour clap, whatever. And so it was like, all right, cool, whatever. And then I'm not competitive, so I didn't care. But then he's like, he just curses out of nowhere. And I was like, what? And he's like, I have the same game twice, so I really only have 59. And I was like, oh, what game? And he's like, something called Idle Mahjong 2. And I look it up, and I'm like, I actually don't have that one. And he's like, well, now you do, because I don't need it. So he gave me Idle Mahjong 2, which is this game, for the Neo Geo CD. And of course, I was like, you do realize we're now tied, right? We had 59-59, and he's like, oh, I have to, he wanted to rectify that. But either way, that's how I ended up with this game for free. It's an adult mahjong game. I guess that, it's anime or hentai, whatever. I don't know. That's not my universe, so I don't really know much about it. But yeah, it's just a Neo Geo CD game I didn't have. Because like I said, I have now, well, with this one, I would have had 59, and there's only like maybe 80, 90 games or something like that on the entire console. It's just that, whatever. It was cool to pick one up. And that should have been the end of the story. Until fast forward, I ended up, like I said, on the East Coast, and I'm hanging out with not Rob Janos, but another Rob, aka Rob Steiner. And a lot of people in the convention circuit know who that dude is. I swear there's a rule in New Jersey where 1 out of every 3 people has to be named Rob. It just seems to be the law in that state. But anyway, so I'm up with Rob Steiner, and he's like, hey man, let's drive over to Pennsylvania. We're going to go to Game Junkie. Game Junkie is a video game store around Philadelphia. I've actually done a video on it if you want to see. Like, it was a few years ago, but I just did a tour of the place, and I hadn't been there since. So we just check out all the stuff, and I get to a point where I'm looking through like the glass cases. I mean, I tweeted about this at the time because I found a PS3 development kit. Like, the dude's got a lot of like crazy stuff. But I'm looking in the glass case, and I see something that catches my eye because I'm just like, that looks really familiar, but I can't understand what it is because I don't recognize it. It has the artwork of a Neo Geo CD game, but it was totally an unfamiliar game. And I was like, oh, all right, it's this. It's called Treasure of the Caribbean for the Neo Geo CD. But I was like, this does not look familiar at all. So that upon further investigation, I found out that this was an indie release from like 2011. I had never heard of it. There's not very many indie pressed releases for the Neo Geo CD. They just kind of come and go with a little bit of a whisper. So I'd never heard of this one. This was not the cheapest thing, but it was also much cheaper than it should have been. So when I took the game up to the register and everything, like, they kind of double check all their prices and everything, and then they realized like this one had been severely undermarked because this online is usually like 100 plus, but they weren't even charging half that. So I got a nice little deal on it, but he mostly said it's just because it had been in the case for so long that nobody ever updated it. Because he straight up told me, he's like, if you don't buy it, I am just going to update it, which I know it sounds like an older sales tactic than, dirt, but whatever. I still, it was true based on the research I had done. So it was just kind of funny because as soon as I got it, I basically messaged my friend. I'm like, guess who just took the lead? So now I had 60 and he had 59, and he wasn't having that. So he later told me, he showed me some eBay links. He's like, yeah, I went out and I bought like 2 so that I'm winning again. And I'm like, you have fun with that. But yeah, so either way, Treasure of the Caribbean, an obscure Neo Geo CD indie release. Whatever. Later on in that trip, at one point I was in Manhattan in New York City, and I went to a Book Off. Now, if you're not familiar, Book Off is a Japanese chain, very prominent in Japan. They are all over the place there. But they actually have a couple of international locations. There's like 2 in Honolulu. I've been to those. There's like 3 in California. I haven't been to any of those. There's actually one in Paris, France. I've been to that one. And then there's one in Manhattan. Now, in all of those situations, in almost all of those situations, I never really bought anything because it's just the Japanese ones that frankly interest me because they just sell all the cool Japanese stuff, whereas, most of the American stuff I can get anywhere. The French one was kind of interesting, but European exclusives are not super prevalent. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I'm looking through the stuff just to do it, and I saw something and I was like, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger on that. And that was Thor God of Thunder for the Xbox 360. Now, the reason I picked this up is I'm just thinking about this long term. For those who don't know, like, this is from the early phase of the MCU, Marvel's Cinematic Universe, phase 1, where it's like they had the first Thor movie, the first couple Iron Man movies, first Hulk, well, the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, that era. During that phase, they weren't quite what they are now, where it's like this very established, piece of popcorn entertainment, or big multitude of entertainment, if you will. And back then, for some reason, Sega actually had the game license for the Marvel characters, so they pumped out a couple of games. They don't really make, as you guys know, they don't really make these type of games anymore. The movie-based games, Sega certainly has nothing to do with these. And that latest Avengers game, I think it was Square Enix made, wasn't particularly popular, nor did it have anything to do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All I'm trying to say is, I feel like those early Marvel games will probably be, you know, kind of hard to get or very expensive at some point because they're from that same cinematic universe. They actually feature the actual actors. Like, this has Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston in it, voicing the characters and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I just thought, for like, it was like $5 or whatever. I was like, that's a deal. Let's do that. So, plus it's nice to pick up something for the 360. So there you go. That concludes, sort of, the trip stuff I got, except for one thing, but we'll save that for the end. When I got back here, I randomly got a package that I did not order. And so here it is. I have no idea what this is. This comes from Pixel Heart. They are a French publisher. I'll put a link to them in the description. They have a lot of Switch stuff that they make. They do some PS4 stuff. They actually do a lot of indie Dreamcast stuff as well. I genuinely have no clue what is in this box, so we're going to find that out together. I'm guessing it's a Switch game based on the size of the package, but I don't know. So we'll cut through the tape here. So thank you to the guys at Pixel Art, because I had no idea this was going to be a thing. Let's see if we can get through on this side. And this is always the hardest part, is getting through the tape. Okay, let's see. Did that work? Did that work? Okay, here we go. All right, we're through. Inside we have, we also have a little note here. Let me put that down there. It's a card. This is actually artwork from the game Battle Crust for the Dreamcast. We hope you enjoy this new edition of Liberated. Here's a 15% off coupon that you can share with your community. Oh, well, there you go, guys. If you want anything over at Pixel Heart, use the coupon code Adam, L-I-B-E, as in Liberated. So let's open up and take a look at the game here real quick. Yeah, Liberated Enhanced Edition. Actually, this looks pretty cool. There's 5,000 copies of this game. This is copy 1042. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know anything about this game, so let's read the description here. Is a video game. All right, so Liberated Enhanced Edition is a video game that unfolds across the pages of a comic book. A revolution in digital comics where action, adventure, gameplay, and story transition seamlessly across the pages of a hand-drawn graphic novel. The best cyberpunk game on the Nintendo Switch. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So it's some sort of like interactive comic book, you know, type of game. Like I said, I knew nothing about this until this moment, but that's very cool. Thank you to the guys at Pixel Heart, and, you know, thank you for the little custom artwork there. Like I said, feel free to click on the link. Apparently you can get 15% off your order over there. It's Adam, L-I-B-E is the coupon code. I assume it would apply to the Dreamcast games that they have. I don't know. I mean, you're finding this out as I'm finding it out, but there you go, guys. So again, thank you very much to Pixel Heart for the hookup there. Now, moving on to our last item here. This, I know exactly what this is, and this one actually has kind of a story to it. So I did a video last month about the CMOS bomb issue in the PS4 specifically, while also addressing the PS5 and to a lesser extent the PS3. And in that video I show a PS1, a PS2, a PS3, a PS4, as well as the PSP. The PS5 I don't have because it's still hard to get, but I never showed a PS Vita. You know, people were like, where is that? And I just showed a photo of it because I was like, I don't own one. You know, I just acknowledged it and moved on. It wasn't really that much of a thought process. But a guy named Jay Carlos, or at least that's what we're going to call him, he reached out to me and he's like, yo, man, you don't have a Vita? And I was like, no. And he's like, dude, I've got 3 Vitas. I'm going to hook you up. And I was like, oh, dude, you don't have to do it. He's like, yeah, you said that last time, and I hooked you up with a 32X, so let's just not do this. Here, I'm just going to send it to you. And I was like, okay, thank you. But then we realized he lived in New Jersey, and I was like, oh, man, I'm going up to New Jersey. Maybe I'll just meet up with you. So that's kind of, that's how that started. Then it got weird. Because I was like, okay, I'll meet up with you. And then he's like, okay, then we figured out our schedules weren't going to quite work. So that wasn't going to happen. And then he's like, okay, I'll send it to you. And then I'm telling other friends about it because I was trying to coordinate maybe meeting up with this guy. And then one of my friends is like, dude, if you want to send the Vita to me, you can pick it up from me. I'm like, well, why not have it just shipped directly to me? He's like, oh, that's a good point. Well, if you send it to me, then I can hack it for you. And I was like, oh, all right. So yeah, Jay Carlos was like, I'll send it wherever you want. And I was like, okay, can you send it to my friend and he will hack the console or the portable? And then he goes, well, my buddy James, who's going to do the hack, he goes, well, wait a minute, you can't send it to me directly because I just moved in here and I'm missing a lot of mail at this point and I just don't trust it. I don't want to ship a Vita here. So find somewhere else to ship it. So I was like, okay. So I asked my buddy Rob Janos, not Rob Steiner, who all these people live in New Jersey, so it gets super confusing. I asked Rob Janos, can I send this thing to you? And he's like, yeah, whatever. So you have to understand, I mean, New Jersey's where The Sopranos takes place, so this has this big vibe of, hey, I need a guy in New Jersey to send a package to another guy in New Jersey, and then another dude is going to pick up that package from you, and then I'm going to pick up the package from the second guy who picked up the package, okay? That's what we're going to do. It just kind of has that vibe to it, but anyway, all I'm trying to say is Jay Carlos sent the Vita to my buddy Rob Janos, and my buddy James picked it up from Rob Janos. Then James hacked the console. Then I met up with James in Philadelphia, and he gave it to me, and here it is. So there it is, a PS Vita. It also came with a charger as well as a copy of The Amazing Spider-Man. So that was originally the entire plan, but like I said, James decided, he was like, hey man, I can hack this for you. So he did exactly that. So I'll actually show you this real quick. We'll fire it up. You have to understand, until he sent this to me, I had never even held one of these things. Because I never sought out getting a Vita. So it is a very, I mean, I know you guys already know this, but it's a very comfortable little handheld. But he put on some sort of custom like dashboard, some sort of custom operating system or whatever. Again, I'm not very familiar with the Vita hacking scene, so I can really only say some of the stuff that he pointed out to me. Like he added, so you can see the percentage of the battery. Apparently that's not stock. I did not know that. But then once you wave down like that, you can see he preloaded it with a whole bunch of different games. So he's got Vita games, it's got PSP games, it's got some PS1 games, it's got a whole bunch of stuff on it. And then it just, you know, it's got ports. So like it has the PC version of Grand Theft Auto 3, the PC version of Super Mario 64 that are all like Vita converted. So you can just play those like straight off the go. So like there's Mario 64, for example. And I'll probably have to turn that off so I don't get a strike from Nintendo or whatever. But yeah, it runs everything really, really well. So yeah, so there you go. Yeah, and it looks really good. But yeah, we're gonna shut that down. Turn off. But yeah, that runs really well. And so you're probably wondering, like, okay, well, what else did he do to it? So the thing is, again, I'm not super into the hacking scene or anything like that. And I know that the PS Vita had like these proprietary cards. So there is a workaround apparently, which is there's this thing called SD to Vita, and it basically just takes like a little piece of plastic. This is a game card adapter. Like this is what Vita cards actually look like, and then you just put a micro SD card in it. This is a 256 gigabyte SD card, and this becomes the brain of the console or the portable at that point. And then so it just basically does all its loading from there. And it's relatively easy to install new games and new stuff from that. So yeah, kind of accidentally got this like ultimate Vita. So if you got, I might do a video separately on this at some point. You guys let me know if that's interesting to you or whatever. But yeah, there it is. And as I said, it also came with just, you know, just kind of a token copy of, there's a memory card adapter in there. There's Amazing Spider-Man 1 for the Vita. So yeah, I have a few legit Vita games because I have a PS TV, and I picked up like Child of Light at the time. I got that in Europe because it was the only way to get a physical edition of that game at the time. I have some of the limited run games ones, but yeah, it's, you know, the Vita is something I never really dived too much into just because I don't dislike handhelds, but I'm not the biggest fan of them. I mean, this is my stock answer. I own a TV. So most of the time I'd rather play on that. So, you know, but that said, with a hacked one, I have to admit I was kind of having some fun with it, playing around with this, you know, in New Jersey in particular, checking out Mario, you know, 64, Grand Theft Auto 3, all these other random things that are on there. It was pretty cool. So, yeah, so thank you very much to Jay Carlos for the actual console. He said he bought it for his sister, and she only used it once and didn't really seem to have much interest in it after that, so it just sat there. So he was cool enough to hook me up with it. So thank you very much to him. Thank you to James for hacking it. Thank you to Rob for, you know, cleaning that disc and also you know, shuffling this process through. Thank you to Pixel Heart for the hookup there. Thank you to my buddy Daniel as well for, you know, hooking me up with, you know, Total Recall and all that sort of stuff. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I appreciate that. Follow me on all the social stuff, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, the Discord. Come on in, I appreciate that as well. Patreon's always appreciated. But yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.